What is up, Steelers Nation? Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. I'm Noah Strackbine, joined always by my man in the corner, producer Nick Belsky. Find us on youtube.com/All Steelers Talkers. Subscribe anywhere you get your podcast. The Pittsburgh Steelers, well, they held me up at practice today. That's what happened. I apologize that I'm running a little bit late. We were supposed to go live at 3:30. We will most likely have to move these to 4 o'clock because, well, we told ourselves coming into the week, if we could get here, if we can make this happen at 3:30, we will make it happen at 3:30. The moment we realize that is not going to happen, we'll switch it to 4. It took one day. And I think we anticipated it taking one day. I don't think we gave ourselves longer than one practice to think this was going to happen. But here we are. I apologize. I'm grateful that you guys stuck around and had a good time in the chat. My favorite one was spilling beer on the cat. That has happened many of times in my life and probably will happen many more times in my life. But it's a good one here in the Berg, a little sunnier than I expected it to be, and I have good news. The rest of my background has finally arrived in the mail, showed up as I showed up at home today, so I'm feeling great. How you feeling, my friend?
I'm feeling good. It's unfortunate we couldn't make it a whole 24 hours before the dream of keeping the live streams at 3:30 was squashed. But hey, you know what? 4 o'clock, we'll make it work. We got great listeners. We know they'll tune in at 4 o'clock as well. And it'll be better. That way you don't get a speeding ticket or anything worse.
Dude, I was cursing out because, you get caught in traffic, you know where you got to be, and you get a little frustrated. Anybody, they could be driving 10 miles over the speed limit. You're like, can you please speed up, people? What are we doing? I started yelling, realized it was an old lady in front of me, and I was like, dude, let's take a deep breath. Let's calm it down. We don't have big places to be. We're just getting home. So it was, we know tomorrow will be a little bit better, but it's a good show for you guys. We got a good show for you. Some massive injury news for the Atlanta Falcons that we're obviously going to dive into. A major update for the Pittsburgh Steelers AFC North rivals. Raheem Morris coming back with some good comments on Mike Tomlin, but we have to start with the biggest news of the week, the biggest news up until game day, I believe, that has finally ended. The saga that has ran nearly as long as the Brandon Ayuk saga did, but this one has a much better ending for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Cam Heyward inks himself to the Pittsburgh Steelers for what seems to be life. A 2-year extension, 3-year contract. On paper, it reads 3 years, $45 million, $16 million in guaranteed money. You really lay it out, it's a 2-year extension worth $29 million. I believe it's the perfect situation for the Pittsburgh Steelers and for Cam Heyward. Now, is it a little bit more money than I anticipated it being? Yes. But 45 over 3 years is not a number that I'm super worried about. And with only $16 million in guaranteed money, the Pittsburgh Steelers saved themselves and put themselves in a place where they're okay. They can make this happen. They could save themselves in the long run if this situation does not work out as long-term as Cam Heyward wants it to be. And to be totally honest, there's nobody, and I include TJ Watt when I say this, as close as TJ Watt is as a number 2, there's nobody in that locker room that deserves to retire a Pittsburgh Steeler more than Cam Heyward. And if you could do it without taking up a massive chunk of cap space, which I don't believe the Steelers did here, I think it's a win-win for both sides. I'm a big fan of this deal. I think it works out very well for both sides. I think Cam Heyward has an opportunity to make a lot of money and show that he could continue playing for 3 years without slowing down. And I think the Pittsburgh Steelers get to keep Cam Heyward. No issues. And if things don't work out in that 3rd year, they could move on, feel okay. He'd likely retire at that point just a year early. And I think no harm, no foul on the Pittsburgh Steelers end. You saw the news last night hit just after we got off this show, of course. How you feeling, my friend? And what were your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I mean, I can't echo loud enough the statement that you made that there's nobody in that locker room right now that deserves more to finish his career as a one-helmet guy, which is the quote that Cam Heyward used during mandatory minicamp whenever he was talking about the situation. And he had been very outspoken about what he wants, and the big thing for him was the years. He wanted to play 3 more years, including this one. He said that when he was talking to the media back in minicamp. He said that on his Not Just Football podcast a couple weeks ago. I believe that's when he had Russell Wilson on, because Russell Wilson held his feet to the fire and said, what's going on with the contract? You going to sign it here, or what's happening? So, they talked about it. he's been outspoken about it. He ends up getting what he wants. And like I mentioned, and like you mentioned, I don't think it's anything that's going to hurt the Pittsburgh Steelers long term. And as we saw, even in this, the salary cap's not real. So even if they would have signed, it could be detrimental later on. I know everybody's saying as long as it doesn't hurt the George Pickens extension in the future, as long as it doesn't hurt this extension in the future, whichever one people want to bring up. Look how much cap space they opened up just because they restructured and extended this deal. It is something that you should not be worried about. You should not be concerned about, because that's the way the NFL salary cap works. But at the end of the day, the big story is Cam Heyward deal gets done before the season. I know that was a discussion that we had, that maybe they'd break their rule and negotiate into the season with him, but no need for that. He goes into Atlanta, a town that means very much to him, and he has everything taken care of, and he can just get ready for the season.
Yeah, I think that adds a little bit more, sentimental value to the situation. I agree with you. It's cool that he's going to Atlanta. That's where his father's from. That's where he spent a chunk of his childhood. I mean, that's as cool as it gets. It is. It's just it's a reminder that this is not the Pittsburgh Steelers of old. This is the Pittsburgh Steelers of new. And while you could compare Cam Heyward to Troy Polamalu and Hines Ward and Ben Roethlisberger and all these guys, Ben might have been the only other one that you said you should have never forced him into retirement, but a quarterback contract's tough to keep out of retirement. Out of the rest of them, Cam's the only one that right until the end is most likely going to be a guy that you want on your football team, that is going to make a massive impact. He is not going to change anything. It's huge. What comes next is obviously Pat Freiermuth. And I thought it was going to be reverse order. Pat Freiermuth goes first. Cam Heyward goes second. They're going to do it the other way around. I think Pat's coming any minute now. It could happen during this podcast. It could happen later tonight. It could happen tomorrow morning. It could happen Saturday before they get on the plane. I don't know. But I do expect Pat Freiermuth to ink himself to a new contract with the Pittsburgh Steelers before they leave for Atlanta, just to say we have dotted our I's and crossed our T's, and we can go into week 1 against the Falcons feeling pretty good about the situation and where our team stands and what the future holds for the guys that we want to stick around. I still think Pat's going to get himself a contract extension here very soon. I don't know how soon, but very soon. And I don't think the Steelers are done just yet. But as we sit here today, Cam's got himself a deal. I anticipate Pat Freiermuth's going to follow right along with him, and it's going to be a good deal for him as well. And then they send themselves in 2024 in the campaign ahead. And I think that's a good place to be if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers. I know that there are a lot more news and notes. So let's dive into everything else that we got going on here. What do we got?
Yeah, the first thing we need to do is look down to the opponent for the Pittsburgh Steelers this week, and that is the Atlanta Falcons, where Falcons head coach Raheem Morris confirmed that tight end Kyle Pitts is limited in practice to start this week due to a hamstring injury. One of their biggest weapons on offense already seemingly has a bad tire. It's huge news for the Steelers in their week 1 matchup.
Yeah, this is massive. I mean, you could talk Drake London, you could talk Bijan Robinson. Kyle Pitts is a dude who could be a game changer. Tight ends always are a fit for the Pittsburgh Steelers and really any team in the league if you have a good tight end. The fact that they're missing a piece early, I mean, is obviously something to monitor. We're not going to jump the gun and say he's not going to play, but hamstring injuries are tough. And if this is something that Adam Schefter's reporting happened before week 1, you don't know how long it's been lingering and how bad it actually is, and if it's either getting better or possibly getting worse. But either way, the situation is not ideal for Kyle Pitts and the Atlanta Falcons. I mean, a boost for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Not a good boost. You never want guys to get injured, but a boost for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And if Kyle Pitts doesn't play, I mean, it definitely moves the odds in the Steelers' favor, in my eyes at least. You can't go into Atlanta and say, oh, they lost probably their 3rd best offensive weapon and they're still heavy favorites. I don't believe so. I think that if Kyle Pitts doesn't play, you're looking at a team that is down a whole leg in my eyes. A team that you could cover Drake London, you could cover Bijan Robinson, as well as you could cover those guys. You could cover Ray McLeod if you got to cover Ray McLeod, but Kyle Pitts is going to be trouble because there are going to be times when guys like Landon Roberts get on him. There are going to be times when guys that you just don't necessarily feel comfortable playing up against a guy like Kyle Pitts, whether it's athletically or size-wise. And to avoid that situation, I think is massive. So if he does not play, huge boost for the Steelers, huge loss for the Atlanta Falcons, something to monitor. Hamstring injuries are never easy to overcome. And if he goes into the weekend, even questionable, that's something that, okay, that's an issue. There's something going on here. He's probably not 100% come game day. And I think that works in the Steelers' favor.
Yeah, the one thing I'll say before we move on to this next piece here is the Steelers, I feel like, are better equipped this season than they have been in recent years to cover an athletic tight end. I really like the addition of Deshaun Elliott. I think he's going to be good in that role, but I also like Patrick Queen. I like Peyton Wilson. I think they're more in tuned with what the Steelers need to cover guys like Kyle Pitts. But with that being said, it's like the Pittsburgh Steelers losing one of their big weapons in week one. They only have so many. If you lose one of the best ones, it's going to hamper you offensively. Now, again, he was limited in practice. Raheem Morris tried to shrug it off as much as he could. So we'll see what happens as the week progresses. But if he is out, as you mentioned, that is a huge thing. But even if he's in, I have a little bit more confidence this year than I have in years past in the Steelers defense when it comes to covering athletic tight ends.
Yeah, you make a good point there. I agree with you. I look at that and say that if the Steelers are going to shut down athletic tight ends, this is the season to do so, and they've put themselves in a good situation. I mean, across the board, a good situation. I think Patrick Queen is as good as it gets for an athletic inside linebacker. And when it comes to Peyton Wilson, I mean, that might be as athletic as it gets in the NFL for a guy, especially as a rookie. So you're not wrong there. I think they do have the pieces, but it's still, if you don't have to play him, you don't have to play him. So, all right, what else we got?
Yeah, let's go over to a different team and a different passing threat for an opponent of the Pittsburgh Steelers in 2024. Per multiple reports, Cincinnati Bengals star wide receiver Ja'Marr Chase is in uniform and practicing for the team's first practice of this week, going into their week one matchup against the New England Patriots. Obviously, Ja'Marr Chase and the Bengals have had some very interesting contract negotiations, but Chase is on the field and ready to try to get on the field for week one against the Pats.
Yeah, so I know that you were thinking, because I was thinking, and I think the rest of Steelers Nation was thinking, there's a good shot that Ja'Marr Chase holds in and misses a couple of games this season. And maybe when he comes back in week 2, week 3, things just aren't as good as you think that they would be for the Cincinnati Bengals. And me and you argued yesterday. We debated on whether or not the Cincinnati Bengals or the Baltimore Ravens were going to win the AFC North in our predictions. And I mean, Ja'Marr Chase not being there would have been a massive favor in not just the Baltimore Ravens, but also the Pittsburgh Steelers, if you're going to give the Pittsburgh Steelers a shot here. So it was a tough one. It was a tough one to watch him come back. We're obviously pro bag, and I think that Ja'Marr Chase is going to get the bag and going to get a massive payday very soon. But if he sat out, it was big news for the Steelers and would have worked in their favor heavily, even if it didn't impact a direct game from them. If the Bengals start slow, if the Ravens start slow, if the Browns start slow, it just works in the Steelers' favor so much later in the season that you would have looked forward to it. Big news. I mean, it's a tough one. If I was going to guess anybody was going to sit out this season, Brandon Ayuk included, I was going Ja'Marr Chase, because 2 years before your contract's over, you're already saying I'm holding out. This is it. Who cares? You were causing problems, and I thought those problems were going to go into the regular season. Here we are. It's a loss for the Steelers, but, it be what it be.
Let's go and check in on some gamesmanship between Mike Tomlin and head coach Raheem Morris of the Atlanta Falcons. Raheem Morris said he's actually preparing for Justin Fields. He said, quote, "Mike told me to prepare for Justin Fields, so you know what? We did." And then he said later, "That's a nice way to make me waste my time." Or he's the master at it, so maybe it's not, and Fields is going to show up on Sunday. So what do you think about Tomlin and Morris, a little bit of gamesmanship ahead of their week one matchup?
Yeah, Mike Tomlin is the best when it comes to the head games, man. And I still remember there was one day, I might have told you guys this story, but if I didn't, I'll tell it again. There's one day somewhat recently when Mike Tomlin comes into the locker room, starts messing with the media, and just like joking around with us. And there's a player, I'm not going to drop a player's name, but there was a player who looks at me and he goes, man, dude, he's messing with you hard. And I was like, yeah, he always does. He's like, oh no, he does way more than you actually think he does. And I was like, what does that mean? Does Tomlin, is he strategically planning how to mess with the media? Is that what he's doing here? If he's doing it to us, I know he's doing it to other coaches. I know he's doing it to Raheem Morris. So this is classic Mike Tomlin. This is as good as it gets. You could knock Mike Tomlin for a lot of reasons. We do not knock Mike Tomlin for a lot of reasons, but you also have to praise him where he's good at this. And this is one thing where there are a few coaches in the NFL who play those games, who play the mind games early before the week, as well as Mike Tomlin. And it means we're not going to get much. It means that the stuff we get will probably be BS, but he's good at what he does, and he gives his team an advantage to do so or with it. So it's big. That being said, Justin Fields is going to play. We all know Justin Fields is going to get on that field in Atlanta and run the football once, maybe twice, and maybe explode for one if you guys are feeling ballsy and you take the over on his rushing yards. But we all know Justin Fields is going to get in the game. But that being said, Mike Tomlin he's a master craftsman at creating or making you freak out about something that maybe you shouldn't freak out about. He does it to me every other week, and now he's doing it to a new head coach in Raheem Morris.
Yeah, you got to love Mike Tomlin kind of giving you that welcome to the big leagues kid type of moment for Raheem Morris. And
for the second
better player to do it. Yeah, no better player to do it with than Justin Fields. This is a guy that if you're not going to game plan for him, we're just going to burn you. But if you do game plan for him, that's fine. Take the time to do it, because at the end of the day, you probably should already be game planning for Justin Fields.
Yeah, and he's going to do it all season long. All season long, Mike Tomlin is going to come in here and drop some nuggets and talk about this and talk about that. Justin Fields, he's in the game, he's not in the game, and he'll play that. He'll ride that roller coaster as long as he possibly can to make sure that teams have no idea what's going on with the Justin Fields game plan. All right, when we come back, we will answer all of your questions, so make sure that you are tossing them in the chat on top of hopefully some injury news as it comes out from the Pittsburgh Steelers. But first, a word from our boys over at DraftKings. What's up, guys? It's football season, and we've teamed up with DraftKings. Right now, new customers who bet $5 will receive $250 in bonus bets instantly. Plus, you'll receive 1 month of NFL Plus Premium. It's hard to think of a better way to celebrate fall weather, your favorite jersey, and Sunday touchdowns than with the DraftKings Sportsbook app. Download the DraftKings app and use our promo code ALLSteelers. That's $250 in bonus bets instantly and 1 month of NFL Plus Premium after betting just $5. Stay in the action and use your $250 in bonus bets to bet anytime touchdowns on DraftKings. DraftKings is the place to bet touchdowns. If sports betting is not yet available in your state, don't worry. You could still join in on all the fun with DraftKings Daily Fantasy and have the shot to win cash prizes. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. New customers use my promo code ALLSteelers and bet just $5 on any wager and get $250 in bonus bets instantly. That's promo code ALLSteelers only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Shout out our boys over at DraftKings. All right, while we were on the break, the Pittsburgh Steelers dropped their first injury report of the season. Did you get butterflies when I said that? First injury report of the season. We are back.
I don't know if it's butterflies. I had a little bit of nerves because there's obviously a lot of players that you're hoping are not on that list. But at the same time, I'm excited that we're here. We're at the point where we are just over 24 hours away from an actual NFL Week 1 kickoff, even though it is a weird kickoff that we've never seen before.
Yeah. Very true. Very true. All right. The Pittsburgh Steelers first injury report of the season here. Rookie wide receiver Roman Wilson, ankle limited. Corey Trice, corner, limited with a groin. Jaylen Warren, limited with the hamstring. That's definitely one to monitor. Isaac Seumalo, pectoral, did not practice. And Logan Lee, defensive tackle with a calf, also did not practice. But Troy Fautanu, knee, limited as well. I'll tell you this. Just from what I expect, my anticipation, I think everybody who is limited is going to be fine. If you started the week limited, you're feeling pretty good, but the Pittsburgh Steelers have a pretty strict rule that you need a full day's worth of practice. If you're a younger guy, older guys, Jaylen Warren doesn't really need to practice throughout the week. He could go out there on Sundays. He'll be fine. Corey Trice, Roman Wilson, Troy Fautanu, they got to get out there. They got to practice. Logan Lee, he's going to have to get out there. He's going to have to practice. But if I had to guess, they're not going to rush him because he's not going to play Sunday either way. So in my eyes, this is a huge injury report. Very good news for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Corey Trice was the big one. He was the one that I was a little bit concerned with coming into the week. I didn't know where he stood with the injury. I figured Roman Wilson was going to get some work, and I figured Troy Fautanu was going to work his way back as well, especially yesterday when the Steelers were like, oh, yeah. Or Mike Tomlin said, yeah, Spencer Anderson's also going to be the backup tackle, and he's going to start at guard. In my eyes, I said, Mike, you clearly don't mean that because you're smart enough to realize what you just said. So I thought Troy Fautanu was coming back the minute he said that one. And Jaylen Warren's told me, 15 times in the last 2 weeks that he's playing week one. And I tend to believe that, man. So I'm going to continue to believe him. But Corey Trice was the big name to watch. Good news for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think it's a great start for the beginning of the week and eases the mind of, like you said, there were some names. You were a little bit nervous. Everybody was a little bit nervous. It eases the minds of everybody in Steelers Nation who was thinking, man, maybe not the best situation. All right. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say there's one player on the Steelers that Mike Tomlin cannot play mind games with, cannot use in his mind games for other teams. That's Jaylen Warren, because he is not – He's just going to say what he's thinking. He's going to say what the plan is. He's just going to say everything. Jaylen Warren, I don't think has much of a filter. So, anything you want to know, ask Jaylen Warren.
Yeah. Oh, dude, Jaylen Warren's the man, dude. The man. The man. There are some people in the media who take advantage of like interviews with guys that they know will speak too much. I try not to do that because, I appreciate the seniority. I appreciate the sincerity. Excuse me, seniority. The sincerity. I appreciate them being honest and letting me in a little bit. There's nobody better than Jaylen Warren, my friend. Nobody better than Jaylen Warren. All right, let's dive into some questions here. I know we got a lot. If you guys have more of them, toss them in the chat. Sorry, I had a brain fart there. If you guys have more of them, toss them in the chat. We'll make sure to answer all of them before the end of the show. What do we got?
That's all right. You're just thinking of spilling beer on your cats. But let's start with Marlon Lewis, who says, who is responsible for the first down of the season? My money is on Pat off of a bootleg.
That's a good one. I'm going screen pass to George Pickens. That's gonna be my guess. That's gonna be my money bet right there. Quick screen, first play, quick screen. First play, quick screen, George Pickens, first down. That's what I'm gonna guess. Gets the ball rolling, gets everybody outside a little bit. And then they're going to come back with some runs, and we'll see what happens there. But I like the pat. The pat on the bootleg is a good one. Get Russell Wilson outside the pocket. He works well outside the pocket. I think it works well, but I'm going quick screen to George Pickens.
Let's go over to Peter Swistock, who wants to know, to enter a hypothetical land, what do you think happens if Russell Wilson plays well, gets hurt, and then Justin Fields comes in and also plays well in his absence?
Toss me a week here. I'm talking to you. Toss me a week.
If it's at this type of hypothetical, let's say it's around the bye week, 8 weeks, 9 weeks, Russ has played well, Steelers have a good record. All of a sudden, Justin comes in for that initial stretch right after the bye, and Justin's looking good too. Then what happens?
How many games does Justin play? These are all factors.
Let's say he plays like half a dozen games, like 5 or 6
games.
And then Russ is ready right around like the final 3 weeks of the season.
Oh, that's a good one. That's a good situation there. I would, if I had to guess, if it was me, I'd stick with Justin Fields. If I had to guess, it is still Russell Wilson's job. Justin Fields would have to literally knock the absolute socks off of the NFL. Would have to come in here, and everybody and their mother would have to acknowledge that this dude could be the next star quarterback of the NFL now with the Pittsburgh Steelers, that they got somebody. This is it. This is the future. There's no holding back. Like, there has to be that type of of argument being made, and not by the national media, not by the people in ESPN screaming at the Steelers for picking Russell Wilson in the first place. No, it has to be everybody here, the entire Steelers nation, the people who watch the games every Sunday have to look at this and say, there is zero chance you could bench this guy. It has to be a Mason Rudolph last year, where it's like, you knew, I get it, complete opposite situation. Kenny was not playing well. The Steelers were not playing well, but there has to be no thought that it should be Russell Wilson. That would be the only way that they don't go back to Russell Wilson in that hypothetical. That's a good one. That was a good one.
Let's go to Stephen Cornfield, who wants to know, Noah, on my fantasy league, I grabbed some wide receiver rookies. In your opinion, who will have the biggest year between Marvin Harrison Jr. and Malik Neighbors?
Oh, Marvin Harrison. And I apologize if you grab Neighbors, man. I apologize, but I have no faith, little to zero to negative faith in Danny Dimes. Nothing whatsoever. There is not one thing about that guy that strikes me and says he's going to be good in the end. He's essentially a worse Justin Fields. Like, if we're going to be totally honest, he's a worse Justin Fields. So I just don't have any faith. Marvin Harrison, I don't really trust Kyler, but he's got something going on. Kyler's a guy who's made it work in the NFL before. I think he could do enough, and I think Marvin Harrison's better flat out. I'll give you a sleeper, though. Rome Odunze, that would be my pick. If I was going fantasy draft, that would be my pick because I think he's going to be a stud, and I don't think teams are going to be able to double team him at all, which is going to give him the easiest stretch as a rookie.
Steven has another question here wanting to know, is it really fair to say that this isn't the Steelers of old? I mean, we are going back to the ground and pound game for clock control and a tougher defense that should still only improve.
Yeah, I when it comes to actual football and on the field stuff, I agree. This is not the Steelers of old, or this is the Steelers of old. This is go win a Super Bowl, do it the Pittsburgh Steelers way type of Pittsburgh Steelers. I agree with that 100%. I just mean, in my train of thought, where I was coming from and where I've been coming from all offseason is management, is the GM, is the moves that they are making to set themselves up for success. That's what I look at this as, is they are compensating guys. They are going out to try and make trades. They are signing big name guys. There are no more stick emojis where it says, hey, do something Steelers during free agency. There's a lot of change. That's what I mean. It's not your Steelers of old. When it comes to actual football, they're doing the right thing and they're getting back to Steelers of old, which is exactly what they should be doing. And I agree with you when you say that.
Let's go over to Vibing with the Dogs, who says, is Justin Fields going to play enough this year that I can stash him on my fantasy team?
Man, I thought about it. I had a fantasy draft on Monday. I thought about it, but I said no. Not yet, at least. I think you'll get a vibe. Week 1, week 2, where's Russ at? Week 3, where's Russ at? All right, I'm going to stash him. We'll be fine. Just because if Justin was listed as, like, if you were in a league where you have 2 quarterbacks, maybe you think about it depending on where he's going to be, because he's probably going to score a touchdown or 2. But if it's just a 1 quarterback league, it's so tough to say yes to that, just because, there could be a week where he gets 0 points, and that's yikes. So for right now, I'd say no.
Let's go over to Macaroni Salad, who wants to know, Noah, why no hats as of late?
I got the hat right here, actually. Always at all times, chilling. To be honest, I just haven't been rocking the hats. I got it. If we're gonna be 100% honest, when I wake up in the morning and get the gym in early and shower and the whole 9, I'm ready to rock. But there are days where I come from the gym to do the podcast, and I'm like, all right, hat time. And we toss a hat on there. So it's just a day. It's just a day. But I should be rocking a hat because I definitely got fried at practice today.
Let's go over to Marlon Loon Lewis, who says, will Joey Porter Jr. travel with Drake London this week, or will they trust Dante Jackson to hold his own on his side?
So I do believe that they trust Dante Jackson to hold his own on his side. It's uncertain. We actually talked to Joey today. He said he didn't know if he's going to follow Drake London around the field or how the game plan is going to go. It'll be a wait and see thing. I think to some point that's him kind of keeping that close to his chest to say, hey, I don't want to give that away just yet. I would imagine that he follows Drake London a lot of the time, but not all the time, because there will be times when the Steelers, go zone or disguise their defense a little bit differently, and and they use Joey Porter as a guy to say like, okay, look you're gonna stay here. We're gonna try to confuse the offense, that type of situation, just to hide some schemes, some packages, so on and so forth. And I have full faith Dante Jackson is going to get the job done. There's literally nothing in me that worries about Dante Jackson. In fact, yesterday I made the bet, the prediction that he gets the first interception of the Steelers, and I hold true to that. All right. We will come back. We will continue to answer all your questions, but first, we got to give a shout out to our boys over at Game Time. Let's talk about Game Time. I could still taste the popcorn and the soda and smell the beer of my first Pittsburgh Steelers game. And yeah, the Jacksonville Jaguars might have won that day, but I will never forget how loud Heinz Field was and how rocking that stadium was on the North Shore. Game Time has this new feature called Game Time Picks that makes things like getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. I have an upcoming concert in Cleveland the day after the Pittsburgh Steelers play against the Browns, and instead of sitting there clicking on every single section, I'm just going to use Game Time Picks. Let's talk about why it's so great. Curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc. On top of that, you get all-in pricing, which means that you get the total cost up front with no surprise fees at checkout. On top of that, you get seat views because nobody wants to buy some nosebleed seats for cheap and take a guess on whether you're staring at a pole or you just got the greatest deal in the entire venue. Plus, the lowest price guaranteed, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Game Time ticket coverage means that your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code ALLSTEELERS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code ALLSTEELERS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, low prices, guaranteed. Shout out our boys over at Game Time. All right, let's keep this trucking. I know we got lots of questions. Make sure you're tossing them in the chat. We will answer all of them before we head out of here. What do we got?
Let's go to Steven again, who wants to know 2 games I want your honest opinion on. How do you think Chiefs-Ravens will turn out tomorrow? And also, of course, the real outlook for the Steelers against the Falcons.
Yeah, so tomorrow's game, I mean, the Kansas City Chiefs didn't start off good last season. The first couple of weeks are always the hardest to judge or hardest to predict because, truthfully, I mean, I was watching the Pat McAfee show a couple of days ago, and Bill Belichick was on there talking about the preseason and how it means absolutely nothing and nobody should care about it at all, and that's because week 1 is when you finally get to judge things, and week 2 is when you start to get to figure them out. So you really have no idea what's going to come. That being said, I think the Ravens are going to come in here hot. I think Derrick Henry is going to look good. I think the Chiefs look very good, but the Chiefs started slow last season, and I think they're going to start slow this season because they're not going to want to toss everything out there in week 1. They'd like to, slow roll it. They know how many games they have to win. They're going to win those amount of games. I would guess the Chiefs lose at home against the Ravens tomorrow night. As for the Steelers Falcons, Kyle Pitts is a massive part of this. I think the Falcons are going to be much more difficult than anybody wants to admit this season. I have the Falcons being not just a playoff team, but a division winner this season in the South. And I think it's going to be a challenge for the Steelers. That being said, it's hard to go against the Steelers right now just because that defense looks so good. And if you could get the offensive line to work, I have little concerns about the running game and therefore opens up the passing game. And I think that the snowball could get there and you could win that game. So I don't believe it's a blowout. I don't believe it's going to be an easy win for the Steelers, but I do feel confident that they have the pieces to make it work. Shout out.
No, that cat doesn't have any beer on it, so you're good. Yeah. Let's move over to Carl Spackler, who wants to know, what's the subtle nuances that you're looking for this Sunday? For me, it's the amount of 3 and outs the Steelers have, because if they have 4 to 5 in the first half, I'm just going to expect the same season as the last 10.
I would not say that in week 1. In week 2, yes. In week 3, yes, I agree with that. But yeah, 3 and outs is a massive one. You can't have a bunch of 3 and outs, especially with the new offensive coordinator. I could care less about Russell Wilson. I could care less about the offensive line struggles. You have a new offensive coordinator who should be able to get you out of these situations and work logically enough to put yourself, or your offense at least, in a situation to have third and shorts, where you could get out of those situations. Obviously, sometimes you shoot yourself in the foot. That happens a lot for the Steelers. We'll get to that if we need to at whatever point. For me, it's penalties. Just like I said, shooting yourself in the foot. Can't have a lot of penalties, especially along the offensive line. And it's how much does Russell Wilson spread the ball out compared to, is this just a George Pickens fest and a Pat Freiermuth fest? And by week 3, it is very clear that the Steelers need to go out and get a wide receiver, because I think if Russell Wilson could find something in the rest of this wide receiver crew, it eases the nerves of a lot of people. But for right now, I think the nerves are very high. So I'm going penalties, and I'm going, just ball, whatever the word is, how much he's spreading it out throughout the game.
Let's go to Vibin with the Dogs, who wants to know, do you have an early prediction for the Steelers' division record this season? We obviously still have like 3 months until they actually have a divisional game, but do you have an early prediction for the record?
Man, what'd they go last year? They went 6
5-1
last year?
5-1
last year. I'm gonna say 4-2 this year. I think that I believe that they lose one to Baltimore and they lose one to Cincinnati. That's my guess. I think they beat the Browns twice. I don't believe either of them are going to come easy, but I think they beat the Browns twice. And I think that they lose one tight to Baltimore early. Maybe it's the first one, but they lose one tight to Baltimore, and then I think Cincinnati is going to scare some people, so they're gonna fall to Cincy.
Yeah, I did my record prediction again for Bleacher Report earlier this week, and I went 4-2 in the division. Same thing, sweeping Cleveland Browns, but I also have them losing one to the Ravens at home and losing one to the Bengals on the road specifically, because I'm not picking the Steelers to lose at M&T Bank Stadium.
Yeah, no.
Let's go over to Thomas, who wants to know, what's the update with Jaylen Warren? Interested to see what the run game looks like if he's not on the field.
So I believe Jalen's going to play. Came back limited today. Obviously, I have almost no worries. He's going to be on the field, and I think he'll be a full go come Sunday. He said it to me a bunch of times. I'm going to play week 1. So until that changes, I don't think my mindset's going to change. I expect him to be out there, and I expect him to be pretty okay.
Let's go over to Thomas again, who says, it seems like there's no push for another wide receiver option after Ayuk re-signed with the Niners. Do you feel confident with the current wide receiver room?
I just feel that there are no options, that the Steelers have found themselves in a situation where they went all in on Brandon Ayuk. They tested the waters on a bunch of other wide receivers. Nothing came back, and they find themselves in a situation where they just are not, they're shit out of luck, if we're going to be honest. That's where we stand, is the Pittsburgh Steelers just don't have options anymore, and maybe those options will rise throughout the season, but for right now, there's just nothing. I don't know how confident I feel in this room. I feel confident in George Pickens. I feel confident that the rest of them can do something, and I feel confident in the tight end room. So I hope that's enough to get by. I'll say this. I was looking at the Green Bay Packers wide receiver room earlier today, and I realized the Steelers are loaded compared to those guys. So it could get worse.
I don't know. I like the Packers receiver room with a lot of upside. Again, they have to prove it, but they have a lot of upside.
I was going to say, a lot of upside. I 100% agree with that, but a lot of unproven upside.
I mean, it's the same thing with the quarterback, but this is not a Packers podcast, so we'll move over and talk more Steelers. Marlon wants to know, will the defense's weakness be stopping the run once again? And if so, will it be improved?
I don't think it'll be the weakness this year. I have a hard time kind of identifying what the weakness is going to be. Maybe slot corner. So whoever is the slot wide receiver might be the weakness there for the Steelers defense. But the way I look at it is Patrick Queen could stuff the run. Landon Roberts could stuff the run. Keanu Benton is only getting better, and he's going to play a big role there. So there are names. Dean Lowry's a run stuffer. There are names to juice up that run support on defense, and I think the Steelers have done that. So it's not a concern of mine just yet. I think last year they were very weak at inside linebacker, and that played a huge role. That's just not the case this year, luckily.
Next question. Do you think it's out of the question that Cordarrelle Patterson scores a touchdown this weekend?
No, definitely not. I think he's going to be more involved on offense than we anticipate, and I see a role for Cordarrelle. We'll wait and see, but I would not rule it out of the realm of possibilities that he finds himself in the end zone. And I think the Steelers are going to try to get him in the end zone because they're going to want to get him involved a little bit more than I think we thought they were going to.
I'd say it's a revenge game, but he's been around the league enough that I'm not sure you can count them as revenge games anymore for Cordarrelle Patterson.
No, but it is. I mean, back home in Atlanta, you spent a lot of time there. You made your whole career there. Yeah. So yeah. That's where we're at.
Let's go to Black and Yellow Texas Steel, who says, how many interceptions for Minkah Fitzpatrick this season?
I would say, what I guess the other day, 5. I think I'm sticking with 5 or 6. It's over 4. My guess is over 4. You're playing Minkah ball. You got reliable corners. They're going to throw it deep. They're going to take chances. I'm going 5 or 6.
Let's go over to Carl, who wants to know, what are your thoughts on another couple years when Frazier improves? The Steelers do their own, quote, tush push. With his background, I feel like he's the perfect type of center for that type of play.
I like the tush push, and I think Frazier could do it well, but from what I have been told by a number of guys is that is way more complicated than you think it is, and you're also risking injury. So that's going to be a concern for the Steelers. But I like the tush push, and I would like to see the Steelers get that involved for sure.
Let's go over to JT, who says, how are you feeling about a Najee, Warren, and Patterson backfield trio?
I feel great about it. I mean, I feel fantastic. Najee and Jalen are really, really, really good. And then you get Cordarrelle Patterson in there, and I think he works very well as well. So I'm a big fan of the running back room. I think it's the best asset of the entire offense. So I'm all juiced up to see what they bring on Sunday.
Let's go over to Cody Silva, who says, shotgun season is upon us. Which one of you guys can shotgun a beer faster?
We've never shotgunned a beer faster, but I'm telling by Nick's look, I'm going to say me. I'm going to
say it's you. I have not shotgunned a beer since pre-COVID, so I'm a little out of practice.
I was camping over the weekend, and some dude came up to me. Never met this guy before in my life. Still don't know his name. I didn't speak any words to him. I didn't have a conversation during, before, or after. And he said, you shotgun a beer? And I said, yeah, if you got one, I guess. And he got real braggy. We shotgunned a beer, and I beat him, but he just immediately walked away. He looked at me and said, all right, and left. And I never saw him again. It was a very strange encounter.
Yeah, I'm not going to bet on myself in that, but I'm certainly up for the challenge.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
Let's go to Steven Burns, who says, hey, guys, back in March, I read that the Steelers were looking to get Josh Reynolds from the Lions. Could that still happen, or are we stuck with who we currently have?
I mean, Josh Reynolds is in Denver, so he's not an option. But we'll see come the middle of the season if more wide receivers are available. That's where I kind of stand with the wide receiver room. Right now, they're going to rock with who they rock with, and we'll see how the season goes if guys become available.
Let's go over to Caleb Campbell, who says, when do you think the Steelers will sign Xavier Howard? It makes a lot of sense because Xavier Howard has played with Minkah Fitzpatrick, Deshaun Elliott, and Landon Roberts down in Miami.
I like Xavier Howard, and I think Xavier Howard's a very good corner. That being said, the off the field stuff, the weird stuff that happened this offseason probably deters teams from trying to sign him. So we'll see what happens. But I like him, man. I've spoken to people down in Miami and just said, hey, give me a scouting report on this guy. Is he still good? And they said, yeah, he's still very good. He could still run. he could play man and zone coverage. So if you're going to use him as a third corner, you might as well get the bang for your buck because he's worth it. And I think he'd be a good asset for the Steelers, but they just haven't shown any interest.
Let's go to Vibin' with the Dogs, who wants to know who ends up with more touchdowns this year, Connor Hayward or Big Darnell Washington?
Oh, Connor Hayward. I'm going to go Connor Hayward. I think Connor Hayward's like that, squeeze him into the end zone a couple of times where that's all he catches is touchdown passes. I'm going to say Connor Hayward.
What, 8 catches on the year, 4 touchdowns? Is that what
you're that's what we could find. Like we could see ourselves by the end of the season with like 100 yards, 12 receptions, 4 touchdowns.
Paul wants to know, what are the odds the Steelers get a defensive touchdown this week? Something about that week 1 Steelers defense is scary. He's got it at -150. Wow, that is a interesting price.
That's a terrible.
That's a terrible price.
You got to find. You should hit up DraftKings Sportsbook, my friend, because they probably got better odds than that. That -150 would be a tough one. If it was like plus 2,500, I'd feel pretty confident about that situation. I'm gonna say it's not out of the realm of possibilities. I'm always a good defensive touchdown better. I don't hit them most times, but with Steelers defense, you just never know.
Let's go over to James Reese, who says, if after 3 to 4 weeks, the ball isn't getting spread out between receivers, will they be willing to take a shot on Roman Wilson getting more time and more targets?
Yeah, I think Roman Wilson's going to work himself into a pretty good role with the Steelers either way. I look at Roman Wilson as a guy that has looked good throughout the summer before his injury, and the Steelers are excited about what they bring. And they said to him right from the jump, right when he got drafted, hey, you are going to have a role here right from day one, and they're going to try to give it to him. He's got to work his way back. But I think either way, whether it's getting spread around or not, he's going to find himself with a role.
James hitting us with the DraftKings, who says it is plus 500 on DraftKings for a defensive touchdown, which I was going to say it. I should have. Now nobody's going to believe me, but I was going to say probably plus 500. I put some money on it. So if they get a defensive touchdown, just know I might be jumping up and down on my couch.
Yeah.
Let's go over to X Concepts, who says, how much cap space do the Steelers have available after freeing up more money with Cam Heyward's deal?
I don't know yet. I haven't checked with Cam Heyward's deal or if it's been implemented yet on Over the Cap or Spotrac. They were just about $15 million, I believe, 15 point something before that. So I'd imagine it's a little bit more because they probably reverted some of that to a signing bonus. But to be honest, I don't know. That's a good question. I will get back to you tomorrow to make sure that I have those exact numbers. But for right now, I don't know.
BHZ wants to know, do you think the Steelers could trade for John Mechie from the Houston Texans?
Yeah, I think it's a possibility, but I think if we're going to be honest, if I had to guess what Steelers trade happens for a wide receiver, it's going to be a Robert Woods trade. So if I had to guess, that's where they're going. But John Mechie's a name that they're going to call and they're going to look into, but I'm just not certain that the Houston Texans are willing to give him up.
The kid wants to know, how's Broderick Jones been looking as of late?
He looks good. I mean, in practice, it's one thing, and he looks good in practice, but he looks terrible in the preseason. So we'll wait and see. Nothing counts until week 1. I've held strong to that. I will continue to hang strong to that. Nothing counts until week 1. We'll see what happens this week. It hasn't been good, but again, I'm going to hold on faith that could change.
Josh Dahm wants to know, will Boswell miss more than 2 kicks this year? He's the most underrated kicker in the NFL.
2 kicks is a little. So, yeah, I'm going to go more than 2 kicks. He misses more than 2 kicks. But I agree with you. I think Chris Boswell is the second, third best kicker in the NFL, continues to be the second, third best kicker in the NFL, and will remain that way. So I'm going to go over 2, but maybe 3 or 4 max, which is like a pretty normal number for kickers.
Gino wants to know, do you think the Steelers should try to draft Shedeur Sanders, Cam Ward, or Travis McMillan from Arizona?
I would not go Shedeur Sanders. I want nothing to do with Deion Sanders. Nothing. That guy is ridiculous. Like I was a huge fan of Deion Sanders when he was at Jackson State. I am the biggest proponent of what he is trying to do as a head coach in Colorado. Cam Ward is a stud. I'm a big McMillan guy. I think McMillan's a monster. I think he brings crazy size, which the Steelers love, and he's just a physical body. He'd match up very well with George Pickens, especially in Arthur Smith's offense. So I'd go McMillan.
While we're on the topic of college football, Idaho Keith says, have you guys seen Ashton Jaunty from Boise State? It'd be great to see him in a Steelers uniform.
I have not actually, but
He scored, I think, 6 touchdowns last week.
That's nuts. So I will go watch some film. To be honest, I didn't watch the Boise State game. I should have, and I don't ever watch like ESPN or anything, so I miss that stuff all the time. But I'll dive into the tape for sure. 6 touchdowns. I'm gonna go watch them.
Yeah, last week he had 20 carries, and I don't know what just happened, but 267 yards and 6 touchdowns.
Wow. All right. Well, that's my night right there. That's my night right there. I'm sitting down and watching Ashton Jaunty and his tape.
Let's go to Carlton Ray, who says, who is the most valuable player for the Steelers in week 1?
Najee Harris, Jaylen Warren. I would say those two are my most valuable players, but Broderick Jones probably plays a massive role there too, because how good he's going to be will determine how good the Steelers offense is. So I'm going to go those 3. Sleeper here is Spencer Anderson. Can you replace Isaac Seumalo? We're going to find out come Sunday.
Especially going up against Grady Jarrett. That's going to be a tough task for Spencer Anderson stepping in for week 1.
Yeah, massive.
Let's go over to Frank Beans, who says, how about prying Devontae Adams from the Las Vegas Raiders around the trade deadline, assuming we're still in it and the Raiders are not?
Yeah, I like that one. I'm a big go trade for Devontae guy if he's available. You could get out of his contract after this season. I think it makes a lot of sense for the Steelers. But again, just like you said, that's are the Raiders in it or are they not? And are the Steelers in it and looking to add somebody? A lot of questions, but I would say he's pretty high on the list of possibilities come roughly week 8, depending on what the Raiders are looking to give up for him. Because that's the other thing. The Steelers are not going to give up a first-round pick or a second-round pick for a guy they're going to get for half of a year. So it might lower their expectations of what they're getting. They'd have to be like real Super Bowl contenders to go out and make that move and give up a bunch of draft capital.
It's a wrap for questions today.
Awesome. With that said, guys, we are going to head out of here. Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk again. I apologize that I'm late. We are going to move it to 4 o'clock tomorrow and moving forward because, well, I don't want to yell at old people when they're driving a little bit slower when I'm trying to get back from the facility. With that said, find us on youtube.com/All Steelers Talk. Make sure you subscribe anywhere you get your podcasts. And as always, please find all of our work at si.com/NFL/Steelers. We will be back tomorrow. Enjoy another beautiful day in the Berg. Peace.